Hello, today I want to continue looking at this Psalm 37, that we've been studying a few times, taking a look at a few of the commands given here. In the past, we read about trust in the Lord, delight yourself in the Lord, commit your way to the Lord. And then the last time we looked at it, we looked at rest in the Lord and what that meant to rest in the Lord. And so today we'll continue looking at that same verse 7, that says, rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. And this is, in my mind, a fascinating word, a fascinating translation. When we look at the actual meaning of the word used here, the word used that's translated wait patiently, because as I'll hover over here in a second, it can also mean longingly. And so what I did was took a look at this word and look at the way it's normally translated in the Old Testament in the Hebrew. And as we look at this, we'll see there's a much more meaning, I believe, behind this that's good to see as we look at the rest of the context of this psalm. So the word used here can mean to twist, to whirl, or to dance. One instance. So it's the idea of twisting around in a circle. The most literal action or translation is this twisting or whirling about, which oftentimes takes place during dancing. It also has a connotation with writhing or fear or trembling or travail. And so it's the idea of internally, that idea of being twisted about, of whirling about on the inside, that idea of travail or to writhe. To writhe is like to twist uncomfortably because of something that's happening emotionally within you. And so again, when we think about these things, when we think about the word used there in Psalm 37 again, we start to understand more the meaning behind it. This idea of travail, to be in anguish or be in pain, and being twisted about, even again where that emotional state has a physical repercussion on you. You're uncomfortable, you're twisting about. So again, and we'll look at this in depth, and I think it is important, because when we see this again and go back to Psalm 37 at the end, we'll see why this is so important and what it means for us as we rest in the Lord and as we wait upon him. So again, to dance, to twist, to writhe in pain or in anguish, to wait anxiously. And then it can also mean to give birth. And so again, we know during the process of giving birth, there is travail, there is writhing, there's pain involved before the birth takes place, where there's this great joy. And that's part of the process as well that we'll look at. And part of the meaning, I feel like, conveyed in just this one word used during this psalm in the greater context of the entire psalm. So we'll look at a couple usages of this word. That there's two words generally that are also used for the idea of waiting. One word is to bind things together, to wrap things around each other. So when we wait upon the Lord, we're wrapping ourselves around him, around his promises and around his word, kind of binding ourselves to him. And this, again, this other word used for wait that we're looking at now is this idea of being twisted about, or to be a bit anxious or in travail as we wait upon him. So Psalm 29 is one usage of this word, or a close variant of this word, that says, the voice of the Lord makes the deer give birth. And that idea of giving birth is the same word usage here. And strips the forest bare, and in his temple everything says glory. And so the idea, again, of giving birth is closely identified with this word. Also in Judges, there's this account of a king that is put to death by a servant of the Lord. And when that happens, the man who killed him closes the doors behind him and leaves. And then that king's servants are waiting for him. They think maybe he's going to the bathroom. And so they're waiting. and they get anxious after a while. So it says, so they waited until it would have been shameful to wait longer. But behold, he did not open the doors of the roof chamber. And so you have to picture these men waiting and understanding, okay, it's been way longer than it should be. So they took the key and opened them, and behold, their master had fallen to the floor dead. And so this idea of getting anxious and starting to walk around and get nervous and not knowing what's going on, again, implies this type of waiting that isn't a restful, peaceful waiting. In Micah chapter 1, it says this, for the inhabitants of Marath waits for something good, the inhabitant of Marath waits for something good, because a disaster has come down from the Lord to the gate of Jerusalem. So again, in this idea of waiting, it's implying here, as it says literally, possibly has been in agony for, right? This idea of really anxiously waiting for something, longingly, as it says, and again in Psalm 37, that it's not just a passive, completely peaceful type of waiting, but there's this desire, there's this strong desire or urge for something to be completed or brought about. In Jeremiah 23, behold, the storm of the Lord has gone forth in wrath, even a whirling tempest. So the whirling is the same idea here of turning about or twisting that is used, that same word usage. It will swirl down on the head of the wicked. The anger of the Lord will not turn back until he has performed and carried out the purpose of his heart. In the last days, you will clearly understand it. So again, this idea of whirling about can be used in connection with a storm. It can be used in connection with the sea being churned up. It can be used even with a sword that's being swung about and turned about and whirled. All these things, and again, it implies not just something pleasant, but something that's done with some anxiety about it. And then this from Psalm 145. In this, the word isn't used here, but I have a few passages here that I felt like closely conveyed the same type of theme or almost environment around the word that we're studying in Psalm 37. So in Psalm 145 it says, the Lord supports all who fall down and raises up all who are bowed down. The eyes of all look to you, and you give them their food in due time. And that was the thing that was brought to mind as I looked at this word, is this idea of the eyes of all look to you, and you give them their food in due time. So it's translated here, and it gives a literal translation of wait or hope for. So if you think of waiting upon someone for food and looking at someone, you're waiting longingly, and if you're hungry or starving, there's a bit of anxiety there again. These are some of the ideas conveyed by that word usage in Psalm 37. You open your hand and satisfy the desire of every living thing. So again, there is that idea of satisfaction, that there's a desire, again in Psalm 37, that's conveyed in terms of delight yourself in the Lord, and he will grant you the desires of your heart. And so the same idea is conveyed here, as those look to him for their food in due time. Again, in due time implies that there may be waiting involved there. But ultimately, as it says here, the Lord opens his hand, and every living thing has its desires satisfied. The Lord is righteous in all his ways and kind in all his works. The Lord is near to all who call on him, to all who call on him in truth. He will fulfill the desires of those who fear him. He will also hear their cry for help and save them. So again, even though we look at that word usage in Psalm 37 and we see all this implied there, this sort of anxiety or being twisted about or being in anguish, or that idea of the process of giving birth where there's pain and then followed by joy. That's part of the process of resting in the Lord, but yet implied as well as the understanding of who the Lord is. Again, that he is righteous in all his ways, kind in all his works, near to all who call on him, to all who call on him in truth, as it says here. And ultimately, he will fulfill the desire of all those who fear him. He will hear also the cry of for help and save them. So again, resting in the Lord, as we've talked about previously, is resting in who he is ultimately. And that might and normally implies a lot of waiting for us. And in that waiting, again, there isn't always going to be peace, but there's going to be this urge for satisfaction. But the Lord's will isn't accomplished always in the moment, but over the course and period of time. And that's what the next passage in Romans really exemplifies as well. This, I feel like, is just another example of, again, this is going to be not in the Hebrew, but in Latin. And here, again, the same word isn't used, but very similar words are used to convey the same thing. And it's, I think, because it's Paul and he was familiar with the Hebrew as well, and familiar, obviously, with the Old Testament, a lot of the same ideas here are conveyed in an interesting way. So he says, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is to be revealed to us." So again, that same idea of currently suffering versus joy and glory in the future. For the eagerly awaiting creation waits for the revealing of the sons and daughters of God. So again, eagerly awaiting, that same idea of longingly waiting, of wanting something, being very desirous of something, waiting for something. For the creation was subject to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope. And that's what all of creation is in right now. And as we'll talk about, this creates this groaning process within all of creation, that there's this desire and this understanding that this is not the state that ultimately will bring about our satisfaction, but there's a greater state of joy and delight and satisfaction that we all long for, not knowing exactly what it is, but knowing that there is something better. And in that, there's this process of sort of giving birth, of being in the anguish of the current state. So he says, "For we know that the whole creation groans and suffers the pains of childbirth together until now." And that's, again, that same idea that's laid out here that we've talked about, again, starting in Psalm 37 and the different ways that word is used throughout the Old Testament. Paul uses the same idea here, that idea of waiting in childbirth, of being in travail or pain or anguish or twisted or whirling about inside, to be moved by these emotions. And not only that, but we ourselves, but also we ourselves, having the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves. Again, that idea of being inwardly groaning or twisting. Wait eagerly for our adoption as sons. And again, waiting longingly or really desirous of waiting for something. And so that's part of it, is this hunger and this thirst to obtain something. To not just wait and say, okay, I'll wait, I don't care when it comes, but being very desirous of this thing, looking forward to it with great anticipation. We wait eagerly for our adoption as sons and daughters, the redemption of our body. For in hope we have been saved, but hope that is not seen is not hope. For who hopes for what he already sees? So again, we don't know exactly what's happening. We've been told, and we hope for that which still lies ahead. But if we hope for what we do not see, through perseverance, we wait eagerly for it. So again, wait longingly, wait eagerly. Wait with a great amount of anticipation for what will happen and what will take place. And it's, of course, similar as well to our waiting for the Lord's return. And in Matthew 24, Jesus speaks about this. He says, "For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be famines and earthquakes in various places." So we know as well that there's this process of giving birth, as it were, this analogy used before the Lord himself returns. In the next verse he says, "But all these things are merely the beginning of birth pains, that before this great joy and glory is revealed, there is this travail that takes place on the earth before his appearance." In Malachi 4 as well, another similar usage here that says, "For behold, the day is coming, burning like a furnace, and all the arrogant and every evildoer will be chaff, and the day that is coming will set them ablaze, says the Lord of armies, so that it will leave them neither root nor branch. But for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in its wings, and you will go forth and frolic like calves from the stall." So again, this will finish by going back to Psalm 37, but this relates directly to that idea in Psalm 37, because Psalm 37 is about not being anxious for those who do evil. And so again, in seeing evil, in experiencing it, in being troubled by it, again, there's this twisting and this anguish that we have of not wanting, one, for sin to dwell within me because I'm affected by that, and I find myself still battling against the sin that is within me and wanting to be free from that, but seeing the effect of sin and evil in the world as well, where you see the mistreatment of people, you see the injustice done. And so here again is this idea that at one point that desire, that longing, that groaning will be set free from, and our desires will be satisfied in terms of there will be complete justice, there will be no more sin, and there's this idea again of the kind of the pain leading up to that, but then the freedom after that that's expressed when it says you'll go forth and frolic like calves from the stall. That currently we're like in the stall of our bodies in this world, but then one day the gates will be swung open and we'll be liberated completely and set free from all these things and just shoot right out of the stall and frolic like little calves in the new freedom that we've obtained. And that's what we wait anxiously and longingly for and look forward to with eager anticipation and expectation as well. So again, that is the idea conveyed when we look at the single word or a couple words used to translate that in Psalm 37:7, where it says, "Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him." It's the idea of waiting with eager anticipation, waiting longingly, pining for that moment, that relief and satisfaction from the pain or the anxiousness that we feel of being set free from that, of getting through the process of the birth in order to get to the joy that comes afterwards. So again, do not get upset because of the one who is successful in his way, because of the person who carries out wicked schemes, because again, the Lord will have his will done ultimately, so we can trust in that. So again, to reset it all in the context, rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. And resting again implies that we are trusting in who he is and what he will do ultimately. And in that, again, there won't be a perfect peace in this, but always there's a little bit of groaning that we have to put up with and understand that that's okay. And that makes us that much more excited and eager for complete deliverance when Christ returns himself for this great liberation. Take care.